Hi again, everybody. Sorry it's been a couple of nights. We did a family movie night and we have started back to the world of schooling here at home while we are in isolation. So we took a couple of nights off from our book reading, but we are back at it tonight. The Bobbsey Twins at School by Laura Lee Hope. Kaylee is just about to head off to La La Land. You want to say hi? Oh, that's just a little wave from the side. Little wave. Hello. Anyway, so we'll see how long she stays awake and if we make it through a couple of chapters. But we'll get started now with chapter number 6. Chapter 6, Good News. Ooh, and I forgot my glasses. Oh well, see how I do without them. Chapter 6, Good News. The book has to be held farther away. Freddie saw Danny coming and started running toward the front porch. "Stop, Danny Rugg!" shouted Bert, dropping the hose. "You leave my brother alone." The hose swished around the ground like a snake, and the next minute Danny got the full spray on his legs and feet. You quit that," he gasped, shaking his fist at Bert. "I'll fix you." What a sight Danny was. He was now soaking wet from his head to his feet. Water dripped from his hair and his shirt clung to him. He really looked very funny, but of course he did not think so. His face became beet red and he rushed at Bert. Danny was a bit taller and heavier than Bert and was always ready to fight someone smaller than himself. But what Bert lacked in size, he made up for in courage. He was not at all afraid of Danny and stood his ground. Danny halted and glared at Bert, who looked at him without fear. More than once he and the bully had come to blows, and some of the times Bert had won. Once more, Danny turned toward Freddie, who had stopped to see what Bert would do. I'll get you yet, Freddie Bobbsey," cried Danny, shaking his fist at the little fellow and running after him as fast as he could. "Stop!" cried Bert. But Danny kept on after Freddie, and the little boy was so frightened that he tripped and fell flat on his face. Bert realized Freddie would be pummeled by the bully in another second. There was only one thing to do. He picked up the hose and turned it full force on Danny. The water hit the bully in the chest and splattered all over him. "Ow! Stop! That's cold!" Danny cried out. He halted a few feet from Freddie, then turned and ran toward Bert. But the closer he came, the stronger the water was, and the wetter he got. Finally, Danny decided he had had enough and slunk off toward home, muttering threats at the Bobbseys. At that moment, Sam came out of the house. He saw that something out of the ordinary was going on and called out, "Anything the matter, Bert? You having trouble with somebody?" "Well, I guess it's all over now," said Bert as he saw Danny turn the corner. "If you need any help, just remember that I'm around," said Sam with a wide grin that showed his fine white teeth. "I'll be right handy, indeed I will." "All right, thanks," said Bert as he went on watering the flowers. He let Freddie finish the job, then the small boy played he was a fireman. He pretended this bush and that stone was a house on fire and saved them from burning by means of the hose. His shouting attracted Flossie, who came running out of the house, followed by Snap. She had just had a shampoo and put on clean clothes because she was going to a birthday party at Susie Larker's. "Oh, Freddie," said the little girl, "let's make Snap do some tricks. See if he will jump over the stream of water from the hose." "All right," agreed her brother. "I'll squirt the water out straight, and you stand on one side of it and call Snap over. Then he'll jump." Flossie tried this, but at first the dog did not seem to want to do this particular trick. He walked around on his hind legs and saluted. He said his prayers, turned somersaults, but he would not jump over the water. "Come, Snap! Snap! Come!" called Flossie. Snap raced about and barked. He seemed to be having the time of his life, but he would not jump. The twins began to wonder if he was afraid of the water, and Flossie told him he need not get wet if he jumped high enough. Freddie even lowered the hose. "Jump," he said. This time Snap leaped, and he kept on playing the game no matter how high Freddie held the stream. The dog was dripping wet, though. "Why, he was only fooling," giggled Flossie. Just then her mother called to her from the window. "You'd better go now, dear, or you'll be late for the party." "All right," the little girl replied. She turned toward the street. Snap, thinking the game was over, ran in front of her and shook himself vigorously. Poor Flossie. Her party dress was spotted with muddy water. "Oh, you bad dog!" she cried out. To make matters worse, Freddie, in the excitement, turned the hose in Flossie's direction. She leaped aside to miss the stream, slipped on the wet grass, and lost her balance and sprawled full length with her head in a puddle. "Flossie, child, my poor baby, come to Dinah," called the cook, running from the house. Mrs. Bobbsey came out also. What a sight her little girl was. "Oh, you should have known better than to play with water with a party dress on, Flossie. You will have to change completely and dry your hair before you can go." "And I'll miss the games," wailed Flossie. She knew it was no one's fault but her own, yet she felt very sorry for herself. With Dinah's help, however, Mrs. Bobbsey had to leave to meet Mr. Bobbsey downtown. Flossie was ready in short order for the party. "I guess it was just meant to happen," she said to Dinah. "'Cause you know what? The first time I started, I forgot to take my present for Susie." Oops, wrong voice. That was the little girl. Flossie says, "I guess it was just meant to happen. 'Cause you know what? The first time I started, I forgot to take my present for Susie." "So you did," said Dinah, seeing the fancy package with a book in it still laying on Flossie's bureau. "I'll never squirt the hose again when you're dressed up," said Freddie as his twin came outside. He felt partly responsible. "Neither will I," said his sister. "Never, never." Snap, who was lying in the sun drying off, blinked and wagged his tail. They wondered how much he understood. "Dogs are awful smart," Freddie told Dinah. "And so are cats. I wish we had Snoop back." That evening at supper, Freddie asked his father if any of the railroad men had seen the cat, but Mr. Bobbsey said none had, and added, "I'm afraid you'll have to get along without Snoop. He seems to have disappeared for good. But anyhow, you have Snap." "But someone may come along and claim him," said Bert. "Danny Rugg says he belongs to Mr. Peterson in Millville." "Well, I'll call Mr. Peterson on the telephone this evening and find out," said Mr. Bobbsey. Fortunately for the twins, there was no answer, so the lovely dog would remain with them for one more night at least. "Does that make you feel better, little fireman?" asked his daddy. This was his pet name for Freddie. "And you too, my little fairy," he grinned at Flossie. They both nodded and went to bed, hoping that neither Mr. Peterson nor anyone else would claim Snap. Mr. Bobbsey tried telephoning Mr. Peterson once more that evening, and again there was no answer. As he hung up, Sam came in to say goodnight. Mr. Bobbsey asked the colored man if he knew Mr. Peterson from Millville. "I don't rightly know Mr. Peterson, sir," explained Sam, "but I've heard a lot about him through a friend of mine. You see, old Joe's Mr. Peterson's gardener. Suppose I call him and see if his trick dog is big and white and shaggy." Mr. Bobbsey agreed that this was a good idea, so Sam called old Joe. He learned that the missing dog for which Mr. Peterson had advertised was a fox terrier. It could hardly answer the description of Snap. The Bobbseys thanked Sam and said goodnight. It was the middle of the night when the Bobbsey household was awakened by the sound of the fire siren. As the big engine raced through their street, everyone heard it and flew to the windows. "The fire must be near here," Mr. Bobbsey said to his wife. "Guess I'll go take a look. It's a windy night and a fire in my lumber yard would be very bad." As he spoke, a red glare lit up the sky in the direction of the lake where the yard was. "It is near there," he said. "I'd better go and find out about it." He rushed to the telephone and called the firehouse. By this time, all the children were in the hall listening. They heard their father say grimly, "Our boathouse is on fire." And that is the end of chapter 6. Good night, all.